Good evening, members of the gallery, staff and councillors, and welcome to the December Ordinary Council meeting. Today's date's Monday, the 9th of December 2024, and I welcome you all this evening and declare the meeting open at 7 p.m. I acknowledge the Noongar people of the Budja, which is the land that we gather on today. For thousands of years, their connections to country has provided knowledge, guidance, spirituality and life. We pay our respects to the ongoing connection as well as their elders past and present. I'll advise all members of the gallery that are here this evening that tonight's meeting will be live streamed and will be also audio recorded. If you're asking a public question or making a statement or deputation to this meeting this evening, we request that you take a seat at the table in front of you. Members of the public are reminded that no other visual or audio recording of this meeting by any other means is allowed. That brings us on to agenda item number 1. Agenda item number 1 is attendance and apologies. We do have an apology from Councillor Morgan Bice. There are no other apologies. That brings us to leave of absences, and we do have a motion that has been received by Councillor Bice, and I would ask that in accordance with clause 3.4 subsection 2 of the Standing Orders Local Law 2002 as amended, I would ask that a councillor is happy to move a motion to change the order of business to bring forward item 11.1 to be considered. Is there a councillor who's happy to move that? Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is there a councillor who's happy to second it? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. So that brings us to motion or agenda item 11.1, which is leave of absence request, Councillor Bice. Councillor Bice is asking for a leave of absence from the 1st of February 2025 to the 9th of March 2025 inclusive. Is there a councillor that's happy to move that motion? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there a councillor who's happy to second that? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 2, which is public question time. 2.1 is response to previous public questions taking on notice, and you can see in the agenda there that those questions asked by Mrs Bond have been responded to, similar to Mrs Vanessa Reynolds, and again to Mrs Michelle Rich. That brings us to agenda item 2.2, which is public question time. I declare public question time open at 7:03 p.m. There are no questions that have been received by the officers prior to this meeting, so I would invite anyone from the public gallery to come forward and ask a question, and I will make the comment that I would ask any questions that are made tonight from the floor are made in a respectful manner to councillors, to staff and to members of the public. Is anyone who'd like to come forward and ask a question? Thank you. Just come forward and please state your name and your suburb of residence, please, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Pascal Ding from Darling Downs. My question is, do you receive Port Hedland's council letter about the COVID-19 contamination?
Thank you for your question. I have received the email from, I don't know if it was from you, sir, or from another resident ratepayer, and that has been circulated to other councillors. I don't know if the staff want to make any other comments.
Thank you, Mr President. Yes, thank you for the question. The motion from the Town of Port Hedland was received and distributed to elected members.
Okay.
Did you have another question, sir?
Yes. What are you doing about?
Thank you for the question. As a President, I would say that I have read the email. I've read the motion as passed by the Town of Port Hedland. One thing I'm very cognizant of as a Shire President is that there are 3 levels of government and we need to be mindful what our responsibilities are as local government. And my personal opinion as a Shire President is that the vaccinations are not a local government matter. That's my opinion as a councillor and as the Shire President. I don't know if the CEO would like to add anything from the staff point of view.
Mr President, options are available for elected members if they wish to bring a motion to the council to consider, but officers have no intention of bringing a motion to that effect.
Do you have a third question, sir?
Well, when something like this happens, does it not become the duty of care of the council to look into it?
Again,
I mean, it's something unusual.
Again, thank you for the question. As I said, I have read the motion in full from the City of Port Hedland. Again, I would stipulate, as part of the 3 levels of government in Australia, I do not believe at this point there is any need for local government such as the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale to be involved or to make a statement or be involved in anything in relation to what Port Hedland has done. If another councillor at the table here would like to move a motion, they can. Certainly, as the CEO has mentioned previously. Mr. CEO, did you want to add anything to that? Thank you. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you.
Are there any other members from the public who'd like to come forward and make us, ask a question? And again, ma'am, I just ask you to please state your name and your residence, suburb of residence.
Oops. Hi, I'm Carol Ding, live in Darling Down. My question is, I'm a little bit confused for the next federal election. Is Darling Down still in Canning or is going to be in Burt?
Thank you for the question. Darling Downs will be in the seat of Burt. I need to probably confirm that. But my understanding is with the redistribution, the seat of Burt has come further south. Everything to the east of South West High will be in Canning and remain in Canning. The boundary of Burt comes down to Cut Up Siding Road is my understanding. And after speaking to Andrew Hastie and Matt Keogh on Saturday night, that is my understanding. I don't know, Mr. CEO, you want to add anything further to that?
No, nothing to add, Mr. President, other than just to say there is information on the federal government's website about the electoral boundaries. You could always check there as well.
I couldn't find nothing, that's why I came and asked, but thank you.
Thank you for your question. Are there any other questions that any members of the public would like to come forward and ask? Thank you, Mrs. Bond.
Having brought to the attention of Councillor Coles the safety issue for anyone turning right into our street, because Council has provided a narrow piece of bitumen between the road and the warning sign to show a T-junction. Vehicles pass on that left side extremely close to the turning vehicle. Why hasn't this been rectified before now? Are you waiting for a serious crash?
Thank you for the question, Mrs. Bond. We will take that question on notice.
The bridge on Orton Road near Hopkinson Road requires a sign stating one vehicle only on the bridge at any time, and there should be a giveaway sign on both sides because the usual are making up their own rules and boasting on Facebook. When will this be attended to?
Thank you for your second question, Mrs. Bond. Again, that'll be taken on notice. Do you have a third question, Mrs. Bond?
I do. Why is the Shire spraying glyphosate on the emergency road between Abernethy Road and the Bush Forever 65?
Thank you for your third question, Mrs. Bond. Again, that'll be taken on notice. Thank you, Mrs. Bond. Are there any other members of the gallery who'd like to come forward and ask a question? Thank you. That being the case, public question time has concluded at 7:09 p.m. That brings us on to agenda item number 3, which is public statement time. Public statement time will now commence at 7:09 p.m. and I would ask that Mr. John McEwen come forward and ask or make his statement. And as Mr. McEwen's doing that, again, I will remind all members that are present that public statements are limited to 3 minutes in duration.
My name's John McEwen. I'm from Cardiff. Good evening, Mr. President, councillors and Shire officials. When I talk to people about our struggles with permacast and permapole, they jokingly compare me to Erin Brockovich. This week I decided to research her story, and the comparisons are actually uncanny. She fought for the rights of a rural community called Hinckley that was contaminated by greedy, ruthless company with absolute no conscience. The contaminating chemicals at Hinckley was chromium-6. One of the predominant cancers was prostate cancer. At the last Shire meeting, my wife read out a statement on behalf of our neighbour, Sue Simmons. Her husband has recently been diagnosed with prostate cancer. The kids in Hinckley had severe nosebleeds. Our daughter suffered from severe nosebleeds. The people of Hinckley suffered numerous other problems due to this carcinogenic, mutagenic poison. I asked myself, what are the expectations for the residents of Cardup? One of the problems with chromium-6 is its motility in water. The toxic plumes in Hinckley was found to be 9.7 kilometres long and 6.4 kilometres wide. Although the similarities between our situation are scary, the differences are scarier. Hinckley was contaminated by one company releasing one chemical into their water. We have two companies releasing a whole cocktail of chemicals into our water and air. They use CCA, which contains chromium-6, arsenic, and copper. Cement and concrete, which contains chromium-6. Fly ash, which contains heavy metals such as arsenic, beryllium, boron, cadmium, chromium, methyl, cobalt, lead, manganese, and other heavy metals, organic pollutants such as methyl sulfates, polychlorinated biphenyls, and more that I can't even describe.
Sorry,
or
Mr McEwen,
pronounce.
you've got about a minute left, and I'm being a little bit lenient, but I'll give you another minute.
Permacast are planning to bring yet more toxic waste, such as metallurgical slag, onto the property. Permapol currently has a massive pile of material covered by tarpaulin, around 50 metres from their fence line. While taking photos of this pile, with the tarpaulin being blown around by the wind, I could hear young children playing in the front yard of their residence, no more than 50 metres away from where I was standing. These children were playing directly downwind of this dust. The US regulators made the company decontaminate their mess in Hinckley. It is expected to take 30 to 50 years. Our state government has actively enabled and supported these companies to date. We have not received an acknowledgement, let alone a response to our complaint we made to DERWA on the 3rd of October concerning our tested contaminated water results. It takes a maximum of 4 days to receive analysis results.
Mr McEwen, that's your 3 minutes. We do have a copy of your statement in full, and it is in the agenda, so I thank you very much for your statement this evening. I now would like to ask Karen McEwen to come forward and make her statement.
I'm Karen McEwen Cardup. Good evening, Mr President, councillors and Shire officials. Councillor Byers, thank you for your questions to the Shire. Hopefully they will spark some serious consideration and investigation. The more we look into Permacast and Permapol, the more disillusioned we have become, as you will hear from the tone of our statements tonight. We have been trying to understand how a company with no approvals and relatively little experience can receive a $100 million contract by the state government in a major project. This is despite the fact that there was no infrastructure in place to enable them to complete this contract at the time it was allocated to them. These contracts are generally not easy to come by. We have been trying to understand how both Permacast and Permapol seem to be condoned and protected by the state government, the local government, and the environmental regulators. Why does Hugh Jones have plenty of time to have cake and persimmons with the Ferraro family and yet has no time to take a phone call from us? How do the lawyers of these companies manage to intimidate news agencies that attempt to tell our story? We have been trying to find out who the powerful figures are behind these companies that seem to be able to manipulate all these bodies. Neither of these companies list their board members or owners on their websites. We know that Permapol is listed as Jetstar Enterprises Pty Limited on ASIC. We know that Permacast is listed as Polvine Limited. We also know that although they claim to be totally different companies, they share the same shareholders in Mecca Holdings and Kendaleep, and probably others. We do not as yet fully understand why these companies have been structured to actually hide the names of the owners and board members. Chromium-6, the Erin Brockovich chemical, is present in CCA used by Permapol, as well as Portland cement used by Permacast. And yet, to this date, these companies are allowed to operate with little control of their dust or water. The Erin Brockovich movie was released in 2000. Soon after this, in 2003, Bunnings sold their interest in the timber treatment business in Cardup. This business had been operating uncontrolled since 1978. The company in the Erin Brockovich movie stopped using chromium-6. However, despite the dire effects of chromium-6 that have been brought to light by this movie, it continues to be used at Permapol.
Mrs McEwen, that's 2 minutes. You've got 1 minute left.
I have many concerns about this. I have concerns for my 2 children that lived here from the time they were 2 and 4 years old, respectively, until their mid-20s. I have concerns that the influence these companies have over Derva and the state government will mean no proper controls will ever be put in place. What I want to happen is for no dust or water to be permitted from these premises. I want Permacast to be returned to being a prescribed premise so that it requires a license with proper controls in place to operate, as it is legally required for cement producer and fly ash user. I also have a message for the people that are prepared to poison a whole community, the people in the government that enable and condone them, the regulators that choose to protect them, the accountants and lawyers that hide them and find loopholes to assist them. You all disgust me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs McEwen. The next statement we have is from Michael D'Agostino. Is Michael D'Agostino present? I would now like to ask Mr Paul Larson to come forward and make his statement.
I'm Paul Larson on behalf of the Oakford Bushfire Brigade. Thank you, Mr President and councillors, for the opportunity to speak about item 10.2 on the agenda, point 1 on the agenda, the request for tender of the Oakford Bushfire Brigade station. I'm joined tonight by my members of the Oakford Brigade who are in attendance to witness the council adopt the officer's recommendation and secure the brigade's future at its long-awaited new home on Pony Place in Oakford. The decision marks the end of an era for the Oakford Bushfire Brigade, established over 50 years ago, currently situated on private land at 1099 Nicholson Road, generously donated by the Cargotich Industries. Approximately 10 years ago, far too long ago for me to only be making a statement now, the land from which the brigade operates was sold. Since then, at a moment's notice, the brigade has continuously faced the prospect of eviction. Whilst fortunately the risk has not materialised, it has been a significant source of anxiety for brigade members who know just how important the service we provide the community is. Tonight brings us one step closer to alleviating their risk, and for the future of our brigade, and importantly, the brigade services to be secured. The decision before you tonight is one of an investment in community safety, bushfire preparedness and emergency response. But it's also more than that. It's an investment in the future of volunteering for the Shire. It's an investment in raw education, teaching valuable skills and qualities like resilience, mateship, leadership, and service to those who volunteer. It's an investment in mental and physical health, not only for our current and future volunteer members, but for the community who are reassured and protected by the service we provide. It's an investment in local families like the McCoy family, the Warren family, who are represented by 2 generations of firefighters in our brigade. It's an investment in the brigade members who, behind me, when the community needs them the most, step up and meet the challenge head on. It's an investment well worth making, and it's not one to be made by the Shire alone. We'd like to thank the Department of Fire and Emergency Services for their significant contribution to this project, and our brigade is optimistic that any funding shortfall will be addressed in future local government grant scheme funding rounds, given DFES's significant contribution to date to ensure the project is delivered. Whilst we are optimistic, we want to commit to you our brigade's preparedness to advocate the state government as and when may be necessary to support the Shire's aim to deliver the project in the most fiscally responsible way possible for its residents and ratepayers. So far, we are on track to achieve that aim, with approximately 90% of the funding being met by the state government. Our brigade works tirelessly year-round to keep the Shire and Western Australia safe. But importantly, we as volunteers have also worked tirelessly to advocate for this and secure and funding and land to ensure the Shire stands able to deliver this vital community infrastructure.
Mr Larson, you're right on 3 minutes. How much more have you got?
About 30 seconds.
Okay.
This morning, a petition was submitted to the Shire President highlighting the support of Oakford Bushfire Brigade Station. Despite being launched only 6 days ago during a demanding start to the bushfire season, for our brigade, the petition has already garnered over 300 signatures. These supporters are residents and ratepayers of Oakford, Byford, Darling Downs, Serpentine, Jarrahdale and Hopelands. They have voiced their clear expectation that the design and construction of the new station be expedited. The overwhelming response underscores the community's prioritisation of safety and resilience. We'd like to thank the Shire for taking the ball and running, getting us to this point. It hasn't been easy and it hasn't been without hiccups, but we are here now. And as it is on politicians to do their job, councillors, we urge you to make the right decision tonight. Support the officer's
Sorry, Mr.
recommendation.
Larson, that's over 4 minutes. I have to stop you there.
Thank you.
Are there any other members from the public who would like to come forward and make a statement? Thank you, Mrs Bond. And as Mrs Bond's making way up again, I'll remind people 3 minutes, and please be respectful to councillors, staff and the community. Thank you, Mrs Bond.
This is not a good idea, Fraser. I predicted that after ratepayers' money was given to a person stating they were a charity, it would open the floodgates for more of these ratepayer-funded charities. Tonight's agenda 9.2 has another one of these, and it should never have been brought to council, just as the other one should also have been refused. I remind councillors that the 70 acres Darling Downs Residents Association on tonight's agenda was always looked after by the residents who lived in that vicinity until someone who wanted votes to get elected to council decided the ratepayer would become the cash cow. They get enough financial help from the ratepayer and should buy their own tractor. When a councillor requires leave to pursue their political agenda, they should not do it on the ratepayer purse. You are either a councillor and act like one, or resign and pay for any costs associated with your replacement.
Thank you, Mrs Bond. Are there any other members of the public who would like to come forward and make a statement? That being the case, I declare public statement time concluded at 7:23 p.m. That brings us on to agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4 is petitions and deputations. Agenda item 4.1 is petitions. There is a petition that I understand Councillor Nathan Bishop is going to present. Councillor Bishop, would you like to present that petition?
Yes, thanks, Mr President. I'd like to present a councillor petition by Mr Leon Kingston, a resident of the suburb of Oakford and a member of the Oakford Bushfire Brigade. The petition relates to item 10.2.1 of tonight's agenda, and its purpose is as stated: to express the brigade and the community's clear expectation that the Oakford Fire Station project will be advanced and delivered without delay and sparing any necessary expense to prioritise community safety and resilience. The petition bears 313 signatures from members of the Serpentine Jarrahdale community, not including 8 non-residents. I'd like to move that council accept Mr Kingston's petition.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there a councillor who is happy to second the motion? I think everyone has. Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Bishop. That brings on to agenda item 4.2, which is deputations. I would ask Mr Bruce Hilliard to come forward and make his deputation, please.
Mr President, members of the council, senior members of the Shire Executive. Good evening, and thank you very much for giving us some time this evening to just talk about a major conundrum which is confronted by the DDRA. And it follows on from what Mrs. Bond has just been talking about. As Mrs. Bond pointed out, the Darling Downs Equestrian Park is actually a large public open space which is owned by the state government. It is not managed or owned by the local members, but it is managed on behalf of the Shire and more than 3,000 users in our community to actually ensure that we maintain it at a high level. Now, to achieve this, our volunteers commit to over 2,200 hours every single year. And that equates, by the Shire's own investigation into this, to over $230,000 worth of value, which is provided to the community for just $17,000. And the important aspect of that is that $17,000 does not go to wages. It goes directly to maintaining the area, paying for fuel, paying for our insurance, and investing every last cent into the assets which will be of benefit to our user community. Unfortunately, to achieve these goals, we have to have the right equipment. Now, in particular, the tractor was provided using funds which were originally provided to the Darling Downs Residents Association, but were managed by the Shire, and by mutual agreement, the Shire actually purchased the tractor as far back as 2005. So in other words, we now have a tractor which is nearly 20 years old. That tractor has actually worked really hard over that 20 years. And particularly since we have brought the entire Darling Downs Equestrian Park, the whole 76 hectares, under full management and proactive management, it is clocking up hundreds of hours of work every year. And in fact, we could not do our work without a tractor. Now, the issue that confronts us now is twofold. The first is we have a 20-year-old tractor, and as happens with me as I get older, and all of us and all of our equipment as we get older, it starts to break down. And in fact, as pointed out in your own agenda item, just to repair the tractor and get it to a reasonable standard will cost $17,000. That is more than our annual budget. And in fact, we do not have those resources to actually do that. The second thing, of course, is it is actually getting worse. And from the other information which was provided to the councillors, because I was requested to provide an update, we now have a situation where the tractor is actually getting to the point of being unsafe. It is even to the point where we actually have 7 people who are qualified to drive it, and there are now only 2 people who feel confident to handle it, to do all of the massive amount of work which we have to do on a daily basis. And just in the last week, it has been out mowing on 3 full days. It has been out picking up massive fallen branches. And without that, there is no way we could actually maintain the Darling Downs Equestrian Park for our large user community. Now, your team has actually done a wonderful job of clarifying the issues which confront us. And what I thought for the rest of this period is that I'll break it down into 2 separate components which are important in driving the decision-making at the moment. And the first of those is ageing, and the second is fit for purpose. So in terms of ageing, we now have a situation where this tractor is over 20 years old. It is more than twice the years that a tractor is supposed to be used as equipment. And if we are not careful, it is going to break down. Now, a lot of the side effects of those. The first is, every time it breaks down, the poor old Shire, which is already under a very heavy pressure for its workloads, actually has to go do the work, which we will do for nothing. The second thing, of course, is it is now getting dangerous. And I'll give you a classic example. The tractor at the moment is the perfect utility for mowing in the drains within the Darling Downs Equestrian Park. It cannot be done properly with the mower. Unfortunately, we now have a problem where the electrics don't work. So while I was doing the drains just the other day, the electrics failed, the four-wheel drive failed, and I nearly went into a ditch because the brakes failed. Now I can understand why our team do not want to use this tractor, because it is now getting unsafe. And we do not want to have an accident because of old equipment. The second thing, of course, with that is it is going to get worse, and no matter whether we spend the $17,000 just to repair the basics, we are still going to have an aging piece of equipment, and we are going to be chasing our tail, throwing money into an asset which is continually failing. That is not a good use of the Shire's funds. It also means, of course, that every time it breaks down, as we had earlier this year where the hydraulics broke down, the poor old Shire had 6 weeks where they had to do all of the work that we would normally do. That is also not a good use of your funds. The second thing, of course, is fit for purpose. When the tractor was originally procured back in 2005, it was fit for purpose. A lot of the trees were much smaller. A lot of the work was much smaller. They really only focused on the 70 acres. Now, instead of 70 acres, we are actually focused on the whole 76 hectares of land in the Darling Downs Equestrian Park, and we are clearing it all the time. The workload that entails is massive, and the DK35, which is the current tractor, cannot cope. And as another classic example, we had a very large tree which fell on Sunday morning. The current tractor is not powerful enough to actually manage that tree. So now we've had to actually engage the Shire, and the Shire will probably have to engage a very expensive contractor to finish a job which we would actually be able to do for nothing if we have the right tools. We can do it safely. The last one, which is important in terms of fit for purpose, is the current tractor was never designed to actually manage earthworks effectively. Now, the earthworks are becoming an increasingly important role within the Darling Downs Equestrian Park, but the current bucket and front-end loader arrangement do not allow that to be managed. Now, the way we've got around that in the past is that we have used people like Rod Eden Street, who has, at his own cost, used his own equipment to actually manage most of the earthworks for us for free. As you are probably aware, he has now passed away, and it is very unlikely that his son will be taking up that type of work. Consequently, we now have an asset which has an important role to play. We now have a void because Rod Eden Street has died, and there is no way in the world that the current asset will actually meet the requirement. It is therefore not fit for purpose. We therefore have a conundrum. Do we continue to chase our tail and pour money into a white elephant asset now while it fails and it just becomes a money pit? Or do we bite the bullet and go and get a new tractor which will last a long period? We will look after it. We will make sure it is then producing the goods for the Shire and for more than 3,000 people in our user community. So my recommendation is to actually implement option 1, and I therefore request that you consider that this evening. I will, because there is still time available, answer any questions that you may have. Are there any questions, Mr. President?
I don't believe so, Mr. Hilliard. I think you certainly made your point.
Thank you very much indeed.
No, thank you, Mr. Hilliard.
And thank you very much indeed to the Shire and the Council. You are actually doing some wonderful work, and you are assisting us to ensure that we can support the community effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us on to agenda item number 5, which is President's Report. So good evening, elected members, residents, ratepayers and staff. Welcome to the final Ordinary Council meeting for 2024, which has marked the close of this Council's first full year of service to the Shire. It has been an honour to lead the Council and witness the progress we've made together. This year, we've launched our new Council plan, which has set the framework for a brighter future. We've celebrated milestones that have brought our community together, from hosting events like Muddy Buddies and Harmony Night to welcoming 216 new citizens at our citizenship ceremonies. We have also marked Australia Day and Anzac Day, reflecting on our shared heritage and our values. On the infrastructure front, we delivered vital projects including significant road upgrades across the Shire of Serpentine-Jarrahdale with support from state and federal government partners. Advocacy remained a key focus. In October, we presented to the Community Cabinet, pushing for funding to keep Serpentine-Jarrahdale livable and thriving. I'd like to thank the CEO, the Director of Community Engagement and all the team for the excellent work they did in getting us ready to present to Cabinet. Last week, we hosted the Minister for Local Government and Youth, the Honourable Hannah Beasley, MLA, who visited the new Jarrahdale Cemetery facilities and the youth space, highlighting our unique community connections. December is always a big month for our young people, and it's been a pleasure in celebrating students' achievements at recent graduations, with special mention to those moving to high school and those school leavers who are leaving school and are embarking on further studies or entering the workforce. And I'd like to thank all teachers, and I know there is at least one in the room tonight, so thank you to all the teachers in our Shire. I'd also like to thank the other councillors who have been able to attend those school functions in my absence. So we're proud of all the young people in our Shire, and we wish them all the very best for their future and every success. So as we approach the festive season, let's embrace the true spirit of Christmas, caring for one another. A simple gesture like checking on a neighbour who may feel isolated can make a world of difference. As we travel to see our loved ones, let's prioritise road safety to ensure everyone arrives home safely. Christmas in the Shire of Serpentine-Jarrahdale is magical. Last Friday's Christmas Street Festival brought families together to reveal in the festive atmosphere, followed by the Byford carols on Saturday evening, where our community spirit was tangible. Just in relation to community spirit, thank you very much, and I'm not saying this because there's about 20 of you sitting in the room tonight, but thank you very much to our volunteer fire brigades and our emergency services. Whilst we're all sitting back around the pool on Christmas Day, I know there are people that will be out there working and their only focus is making sure that this community is safe. So on behalf of Council, thank you for what you're about to do and thank you for everything you have done. Before closing, I'd like to acknowledge the Shire's Director of Infrastructure Services, Reza Najasta. I always just call you Reza. Sorry, Reza. Who is leaving after 3.5 years to join the WA Local Government Association. Reza's contributions have been invaluable and we wish him every success in the future. And personally, Reza, thank you very much for everything you've done. You've been here for 3.5 years now, and I know as a Shire, we always cop it about roads. It's all about roads, roads and roads. And the portfolio that you've had over the last 3.5 years has been very, very significant, and the work that you've done has been outstanding. So on behalf of Council, I'd just like to present you with a small certificate. I'll come down to you. Please join me. Thank you, everyone. Again, I wish you all a very, very safe and Merry Christmas and a wonderful 2025. I look forward to seeing you all on Australia Day. That brings us to agenda item number 6, which is declaration of elected members and officers' interests. We have Councillor Nathan Bishop has declared impartiality interest in item 10.2.1, request for tender RFT 10/2024, Oakford Bush Fire Brigade Station. The nature of the interest is that Councillor Bishop is a member of the Oakford Bush Fire Brigade. The extent of his interest is impartiality, given the request for tender relates to the design and construction of the Oakford Brigade Fire Station. There are another 3 that I've just received. The first one is for Councillor Duggan, the Deputy Shire President. She would like to declare an interest in agenda item 10.5.1, which is a Shire-funded tractor for Darling Downs Residents Association. Her interest is impartiality, as she is a member of the Darling Downs Residents Association, and the extent of the interest is that she is a member of that association. The next one is for Councillor Shane Mack. I'm not going too fast, am I? Next one is for Councillor Shane Mack. His declaration is in regards to agenda item 10.4.2, which is in relation to the Briggs Park Consultative Group. His declaration is impartiality interest. The nature of the interest is impartiality, and that is because his son plays Auskick at Briggs Park. The final conflict I have is from, again, Councillor Tricia Duggan, the Deputy Shire President. She'd like to declare an interest in agenda item 10.4.2, which is the same matter as regarding Councillor Mack, which is the consultative group Briggs Park. That is an impartiality interest due to the fact that Councillor Duggan is a member of the YMCA gym. The extent of her interest is that she has gym membership, and the access to that may be affected by the master plan. Mr. CEO, I don't believe there's any other interests that have been given in.
None received, Mr President, but elected members can declare one at any time.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. That brings us to agenda item number 7. Agenda item number 7 is confirmation of minutes of previous council meetings. 7.1 is ordinary council meeting 18th November 2024. Is there a councillor who's happy to move a motion in regards to the minutes from that meeting? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is that the officer's recommendation?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Is there a councillor who's happy to second that? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item number 8. Agenda item number 8 is receipt of minutes or reports and consideration of adoption of recommendations for committee meetings held since the previous council meeting. 8.1 is audit risk and governance meeting, 25th November 2024. Is there a councillor who's happy to move the minutes from that meeting? Thank you, Councillor Mack. Councillor Duggan, you happy to second?
Happy to second, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 9. Agenda item 9 is motions of which notice has been given. Agenda item 9.1 is notice of motion improving council transparency and accountability. This motion was submitted by Councillor Bias. Councillor Bias is not here to move that motion. And Mr. CEO, has Councillor Bias asked another councillor to move that motion?
Mr President, I'm not aware if he has. If he hasn't, then the motion would lapse.
I'm happy to move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan.
Can I just say, has Councillor Bias asked you to move the motion?
No, he hasn't.
Then I might get some advice from the Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Director.
If I might have a moment just to look at the standing orders.
Certainly.
Okay, so the only available option for council tonight, and I'll just read from the standing orders, is the council or committee on a motion agrees to defer the consideration of motion to a later stage or date.
Thank you, Director. Or the motion lapses if no one moves it.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Well, nobody can move it. Only the person submitting or someone authorised by that person. The only other option is council defer consideration.
Thank you. So the only option then tonight, Director, is for a councillor to move a motion to defer 9.1 to a later date.
That's correct.
Thank you, Director. Councillors, is there a councillor who's happy to do so? Motion lapses. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 9.2, which is notice of motion, support for fundraising futsal tournament. I have circulated this motion and I'm happy to move it. Is there a councillor who's happy to second the motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anyone opposed? Thank you, Councillor Bishop.
Just a question, if I may, Mr. President.
Certainly.
I note that the motion refers to the Shoots family. What's the background there? What is the fundraising for?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Bishop. I'm just going to get the notes from the organiser. It is a function to raise money for a family, a young boy who was seriously injured in Bali. That young boy lives in Coburn, so he does live outside the Shire. But the Byford Futsal Club is organising an event to raise money for that family who does play futsal with the group in Byford, but he is not from the Shire. And the $500 is to cover fees for the hire of the Serpentine Jarrahdale Recreation Centre. The organiser has emailed the YMCA but hasn't got a response back yet in regards to waiving the fees.
Thanks, Mr. President. I won't be opposed.
You are opposed?
I won't be opposed.
Oh, you won't be opposed. I'll call again. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried unanimously. So before we get to agenda item 10, which is Chief Executive Officer reports, I will again read out the preamble to En Bloc. So as part of the Shire's efforts to ensure the efficiency and effectiveness of meetings, tonight's meeting will include the opportunity for matters to be considered by Council en bloc. This means that a group of matters dealt with in multiple reports can be grouped together, considered and voted upon as a single motion. Matters that are not to be included in en bloc decisions are those which require absolute majority, matters to be determined behind closed doors, declared interests made in relation to the item, and deputations or statements made in relation to the item. Before commencing the process, officers have prepared a list of matters that meet this criteria. I will now read those report numbers and tiles and invite any elected members to identify any matters that they wish to be removed from en bloc consideration. Removing a matter from en bloc consideration does not signify objection to a matter and does not require the matter to be debated. Removing a matter from en bloc simply means that the matter is to be considered separately. The matters that have been identified for consideration en bloc at tonight's meeting are as follows. 10.1.1, which is endorsement of clay-based wetlands management plan. 10.1.2, significant tree register, Shire and private property trees. 10.1.3, Byford Health Hub, consideration of draft deed of agreement to construct and maintain access way. 10.3.1, confirmation of payment of creditors November 2024. 10.3.2, monthly financial report October 2024. 10.3.3, monthly financial report November 2024. 10.4.1, Bushfire Advisory Committee meeting, receipt of minutes and Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale Bushfire Service, Brigade Operating Procedures Review. 10.4.3, execution of sublease between the Sports Aircraft Builders Club Incorporated and the Fire and Emergency Services Ministerial Body, Reserve 25911 Yangetti Road, Hopeland. 10.5.2, award request for tender RFT 15-2024, Pest Management Services. 10.5.3, award request for tender RFT 13-2024, Security Services. Could councillors please indicate if they would wish to remove any of the aforementioned items from the matters to be considered en bloc? That being the case, can I have a councillor to move that those items are carried en bloc? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there a councillor who is happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 10, which is the Chief Executive Officer reports, 10.1 Development Service reports, 10.1.1 is endorsement of clay-based wetlands management plan. That has been passed en bloc. 10.1.2 significant tree register, shire and private property trees. That too has been passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.1.3, which is Byford Health Hub, consideration of draft deed of agreement to construct and maintain access way. That also has been passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.2.1, which is request for tender RFT 10-2024, Oakford Bushfire Brigade Station Design and Construct. Is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. What would you like to move? Officer's recommendation?
Happy to move officer's recommendation, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who is happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there anyone opposed? Councillor Jarrett will second. He's second, yep. So Councillor Duggan moving, Councillor Jarrett seconding. Anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 10.2.2, which is award request for tender RF2 2024 Cargottich Road, Stage 2 and 3 and Orton Road upgrade projects. Is there a councillor who is happy to move that motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is that officer's recommendation? Yep.
Officer's
Is there a councillor happy to
recommendation,
second the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is there anyone opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 10.3.1, which is confirmation of payment of creditors, November 2024. That has been passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.3.2. Agenda item 10.3.2 is monthly financial report, October 2024. That too has been passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.4.1, which is community engagement reports, bushfire advisory committee meeting, receipt of minutes, and Shire of Serpentine Jail Bushfire Services Brigade operating procedures review. That too has been passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.4.2. Agenda item 10.4.2 is endorsement of Briggs Park Recreation Precinct Master Plan.
Mr. President, if I can, I have received a nomination from yourself to be the elected member representative on the group prior to the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Is there any other councillors who would like to be considered to be the elected member representative on the Serpentine Jarradale Community Recreation Centre Partnership Reference Group? Bearing in mind we will also need a deputy if no one else wants to nominate as the actual council representative. Councillors, anyone want to be the representative or the deputy?
I'm happy to nominate for deputy. Thanks, President Coles.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anyone else interested in being either the council representative or the deputy?
President Coles, if that being the case, if no one was going to nominate, I did circulate an alternate motion with an addition of 0.6 just prior to the meeting tonight to bring it to your attention if you didn't see it.
Have you got that there, Councillor Mack?
I will go to the alternate motion as circulated by the Director of Community Engagement for the addition of 0.6, which requests the CEO present a business case for the following items for consideration in the 2025-26 budget for the Briggs Park Precinct: a public water fountain, and B, a safety mesh fencing for the goals at the Mead Street end of Briggs Park Upper Oval.
So if I can just clarify, Councillor Mack, so your alternative motion is not related to the appointment of deputies, just to the addition of point 6?
That is correct.
So, Councillor Mack, would you be happy to move that motion as it is, with President Coles as the elected member representative and Councillor Duggan as the deputy, with the addition of paragraph 6?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Is there a councillor who's happy to second that motion as it is? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there anyone opposed to that motion?
Mr President, can we just wait for the Minute Secretary to add the details in, and then we're all clear?
Not opposed, Mr President, but could I ask a question?
Certainly.
Do we just have any idea of the approximate time it would take and the cost for preparing a business case? I'm assuming it wouldn't be particularly high, but I just want to get reassurance of that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Mrs CEO, are you able to answer that, or shall I go to the Director?
I think the Director of Community Engagement, Mr President, is able to answer that question.
Certainly, thank you, Director.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you for the question. Shire officers are aware of the Junior Footy Club's request for the safety mesh fencing for the goals at the Mead Street end of the Briggs Park Upper Oval. So work has already occurred to obtain quotes for that project, and I think to your point, I'm assuming developing a business case for a public water fountain wouldn't be onerous and would be achievable for presentation for the draft 25-26 budget.
Thank you, Director. Does that answer your question, Councillor Duggan?
It does, thanks, Mr President. I'm not opposed.
No opposed. Thank you. I'll just call again. We've got a mover and a seconder. Is anyone opposed to the motion?
Mr President, I'll just add that the point 6, I will apologise to the minute taker that there was an updated edit as sent through by the Director of Community Engagement, not the one I initially put through, which is what I will be moving.
So is that different to what's written there?
It is,
Can you
yes.
just please read that out slowly, Councillor Mack, for the minute taker, please?
So the updated wording for point 6, and I do apologise, I did send it through and had a better suggestion sent through from the Director, which would read point 6, request that the CEO presents a business case for the following items for consideration in the 25-26
Hang on.
budget.
Slow down. Yep.
For the Briggs Park precinct. For the Briggs Park precinct. And then Part A, a public water fountain. And Part B, safety mesh fencing for the goals at the Mead Street end of Briggs Park Upper Oval.
Councillor Mack, are you happy with that wording?
Just at the end of Part A, a public water fountain, not and safety at the end of it. Yes, thank you.
Yep. Councillor Jarrett, are you happy with those alterations? Thank you. Again, I'll call for anyone who's opposed to the motion, because it has changed slightly. Is anyone opposed to that motion? Motion is carried unanimously, and we will need a difference. The reason for the differences, please, Councillor Mack.
To capture some concerns of safety of users of the Briggs Park Upper Oval. To capture some safety concerns. Of the users of Briggs Park Upper Oval. Thank you.
Happy with that, Woody?
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 10.4.3, which is execution of sublease between Sport Aircraft Builders Club Incorporated and the Fire and Emergency Services Ministerial Body, Reserve 25911, Yangetti Road, Hopeland. That was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.5, which is executive services reports. 10.5.1 is Shire funded tractor for Darling Downs Residents Association. Is there a councillor who would like to move one of the recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is that the officer's recommendation?
Officer's recommendation, thanks.
Thank you. Is there a councillor who is happy to second the motion, which is the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us, sorry, so it was moved by Councillor Duggan and seconded by Councillor Mazzini. Oh, you're on the next. 10.5.2 is executive service reports. 10.5.2 is award request for tender RFT 15-2024 pest management services. That was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.5.3, award request for tender RFT 13-2024 security services. That too was passed en bloc. That then brings us to agenda item 10.6, which is confidential reports, which there are nil. Agenda item 11.1, leave of absence, has already been dealt with by council. That brings us to agenda item 11.2, which is Munijong Road, King Road intersection remedial works. Is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. And you'd like to move the officer's recommendation?
Yes, thanks.
Is there a councillor who is happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there anyone opposed to that motion? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 11.3, which is Hopeland Road, A and B rehabilitation variation request for tender 97-2024. Is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett, and that is the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there a councillor who is happy to second that? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 12, agenda item 12, which is elected member questions of which notice has been given. Agenda item 12.1 is elected member questions of which notice has been given, controlled waste tracking requirements. That was asked by Councillor Bias and the responses are reflected in the minutes or the agenda items. That then brings us to agenda item 13. Agenda item 13 is closure. I would like to declare the meeting closed, but before I do, I'd like to again wish everyone that's listening at home, the directors, fellow councillors, but most importantly the residents and ratepayers, have a very, very Merry Christmas. Look after yourselves, be safe on the roads, do the right thing, and look forward to seeing you all in 2025. Thank you very much. I declare the meeting closed at 8:04 p.m.